Hi guys, we are Nguyễn Quang Huy and Ngô Trần Tinh Linh. Today we were talking about the Industrial Revolution.
Industrial Revolution, 18th to 19th century. The economic developments of the 1800s saw the development of the Oregon and Honeycomb economies in Europe and America transform into industrial, urbanized ones. The term to describe this phenomenon would be known as Industrial Revolution and was first used by French writer but made popular by English economic historian Arnold Toynbee. The Industrial Revolution was underpinned by the Agricultural Revolution. From the mid-18th century to the mid-19th century, agricultural production increased significantly. The huge increase in food output supported the expansion and sustained a large population and boost trade. The increased use of machine over human or animal power in farming also meant that fewer farm workers were needed, and they could leave the land for industrial town. Better matter and richer fuel also contribute to industrialization by creating steam engine, an integral machine to industrialization with power factories, locomotives, and ships. The new steam engine used coal and iron, both in construction as fuel. Increasing demand for these resources, road, canal, and roadway changed Britain dramatically, connecting Britain and allowing goods to be sent over long distance. Visually, the revolution was clear in the new industrial towns, with smoking factory dominating skyline. The cities was horrible to live in. Overcrowded, dirty, with dangerous conditions in the factories and strict rule and punishment. The Industrial Revolution saw mechanization of taxable industry. This was periodically manufactured in the home, creating the term of context industry. Now production could be increased on a large scale because of the new invention, such as spinning mill and the power looms. The iron industrial development with Henry Blossom is expensive process for mass producing steel. Iron and steel were the key material constructing the tools for machinery, steam engine, and ship needed for industrial process. Industrial labor opportunities drew people to the cities from the countryside to such an extent that in 1750 only 15% of population of Britain lived in town. By 1850, over 50% of entire population of Great Britain lived in either a town or a city. And by 1900, it was 85%. London had 4.5 million people. Glasgow, Liverpool.
It took place between about 1700 and 1900, and so the simple explanation goes it's turned Britain into tooled-up factories-powered workshop of the world. But there was plenty more to the Industrial Revolution than just factories and machines. It certainly didn't happen overnight. And its root go even further back than 1700. In fact, many historians reckon the Industrial Revolution was not just one revolution, but a series of revolutions, a bit like complicated machine. It had a lot of different moving parts, and each of these parts was like its own revolution. New revolutionary technologies and invention meant that products could be made by machine rather than by hand. Eventually, steam engines powered these machines with coal instead of natural resources, like wind, water, and animals. A kind of energy revolution. Transport was revolutionist too, first with canals and improved roads, and later with steam powered trains and ships. There was a consumer revolution as people in England and elsewhere started to replace durable homemade goods with cheaper mass produced alternatives. Britain's population grew from 6.5 million in the 1750 to 10.5 million in the 1800. By 1850, it had doubled to 20.8 million, and more than half of those people were living in the cities. Those people needed feeding, and more food was produced thanks to the improved farming techniques of the 18th century agricultural revolution. There was also a commercial revolution as Britain exported and imported more goods and more food to feed the growing cities. And thanks to long-term changes in land ownership and the law, landowners were now able to mortgage their land to raise money to invest in new venture, a kind of financial revolution. The slave trade and the expansion of Britain's colonies in the Africas also played a part in the Industrial Revolution. British traders sold manufactured goods in West Africa in return to enslaved Africans that were transported across the Atlantic to work on the plantations and grow sugar and tobacco, and that was exported back to Britain. This triangular trade fueled manufacturing in Britain and created enormous profits for wealthy Brits, with some of that money helping to fund new inventions, new infrastructure, and new country houses. But it's important to remember that some of the money invested in the industry came directly from the system that it's destroyed the lives of millions of African people and impoverished Africa to generations to come. Britain did abolish slavery and its own colonies in 1834, but even 1860 England's massive cotton textile industry was entirely reliant on cotton produced by 3 million enslaved Africans in the American South. Huge fortunes that made the Industrial Revolution, and many people experienced a higher quality of life than ever before. The gap between the rich and the poor winners and the quality life didn't improve for anyone. Many skilled workers lost their job to machines, and factory workers endured dangerous conditions, 6-day weeks and 12 to 14-hour shifts. Industrial areas too. In the early 19th century, the average age of children starting work just 8 and a half. It wasn't until later in the century that children under 10 were banned from working in the factories. Towns and cities were breeding grounds for disease. Life expectancy was around 30 to 33 in urban areas until 1850, but 10 years more in the countryside. Poor nutrition meant the average height of British workers actually fell in the first half of the 19th century. Campaigners tried to improve the lot of working classes, eventually securing advances like free education, restriction on child labor, improved sanitation, and better working conditions. Some industrialists made large donations to charity or build new modern towns for their workers. But despite protests, many working people were denied the right to vote. Throughout the period of reform were almost always hard-won. Great Britain was the birthplace of Industrial Revolution and was the only major industrial economy for a long time. Historians have speculated that this was because, as an island, there was relative peace and stability for Britain compared to mainland Europe. Rather than spending on a large defensive standing army, capital could be spent on other ventures, and there was confidence for investors. Native resources were also abundant and readily available for initial technological developments and inventions. Engineers and inventors were also respected and encouraged in British society and were backed by wealthy parents. A powerful navy and empire bringing in vast wealth from its colonies also contributed to the catalyst for industrialization before others. Nevertheless, Germany, France, Switzerland, Belgium, and the United States soon emulated Britain's industrial change. And by 1900, Britain would no longer be at the top, with the United States as the world's leading industrial nation in the 20th century. Ultimately, the Industrial Revolution was the time of great upheaval. By the early 20th century, it has changed people, the landscape, and the politics of England beyond all recognitions in so many ways. It made the modern world. So, thank you so much for paying attention to our video. I hope you all like it.